Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the Annoying Peasant Radio Show. I think this thing's working.
Is that you, Tom?
It is me.
In the flesh?
I'm in the flesh, and so is Brad. Actually.
Holy cow!
Well, we're not naked.
Yeah,
we're just here in the
let's
flesh.
let's not get anything started on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, and I think we have quite a bit of topics here on the plate. I don't know. We're gonna have to narrow this down somehow.
We're gonna talk really, really, really fast.
Yeah. Good night, everybody. What's new with you, Brad? I haven't seen you in a while.
I don't know. It's warm. It hasn't snowed in a couple weeks up here.
It is summertime now. You cannot argue with that.
I know, but other than that, just busy. How about you?
Everything good on my end, but before I forget, I just have to wish my brother a happy birthday. Today is his birthday.
Should we sing to him?
Happy birthday to
you.
Happy birthday.
All right, let's not sing to him.
Have a happy birthday anyway, Marty. Thanks for all your support for the show and all the stuff throughout all the years. I appreciate it. Hope you had a wonderful day.
If he's listening, this will be his last time.
Yeah. Well, we just scratched one more listener off. Right. Darn it. And while I'm on the happy birthday whole thing, I have to tell Tanya thanks for joining me last time.
No question. We
had a good show. We talked about the warfare state, kind of a very controversial subject. And we got through it just fantastically, so I just wanted to thank her for
As always, when she's on, our ratings just skyrocket.
Yeah. Well, she does do a nice job, so thank you.
She's great.
Tanya. Appreciate it. What else we got to get to here? I think that's all. That's all. No, we got a couple more things. Tony Gwynn passed.
Isn't that a bummer?
That really is. That guy was, from what I'm hearing, which obviously I never met the man. I mean, obviously he was a heck of a hitter.
Yep.
Heck of a San Diego Padre teammate.
Yep.
I mean, he was never left the team.
Right.
Apparently, he was solicited quite a few times during end of contract to new contract transitions. But more than that, I hear he was just a tremendously nice man.
I hear he was a real deal guy.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a darn shame.
Yeah. It sounds like the world is a little bit of a poorer place without him.
I'm afraid so.
And that
sounds like also he'd been very, very, very ill, and that's very sad.
Yeah, and even came forward and said the chewing tobacco snuff. What I'm not schooled enough on that stuff to know, but it was that he said that's what got him.
Yep. Too bad.
So
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer for sure.
Yep.
Like almost 400 a season or
incredible.
But
I mean, like Mr. Baseball kind of a guy. Great smile, just no controversy following him. Just did his job, real dude.
Absolutely.
Gotta like it.
And the other thing I heard about him, because we were talking about something else, I can't remember at the moment, it'll come to me, but apparently the guy was in the batting cage, like, whenever he could possibly be there.
Really?
He was practicing.
Huh, who knew?
Yeah.
And he had results from that.
Yeah, I guess he did. I've heard practice makes perfect.
Isn't that... where did you hear that? I've never heard
that
before,
What were we just talking about? And I said... it was some...
Well, we're talking about penmanship and grammar, and now I'm stumbling over those words and being inarticulate.
Yeah. Perfect. No, that was the deal that we were talking about that before, and we were saying, hey, how do you get good at a free throw? You sit there and you practice. You practice. And that also gives you, obviously, it's more than just gives you the skills. It gives you the confidence.
Yep.
When it's 2 seconds left in the game and you got to take that free throw. It's like, no big deal. I did 10,000 of them just yesterday.
Yeah, hear that, Indiana Pacers? Yeah.
Oh, that's another thing. I didn't even think of that. The NBA Finals is concluded.
It's over. So is NHL?
NHL, yeah. The Kings took that one 4-1.
4-1.
And so did the Spurs. So,
So now the big LeBron decision is going to happen again.
What is this going to be? The decision 2?
Whatever. It's the dumbest thing ever.
Yeah, what's going to happen there? You got to tell me your prediction. Is Miami essentially going to be back with the same team next year, or is there going to be is there going to be some significant changes?
Okay, I'm going to give you the inside track.
Okay, good.
This is profound.
Cool.
You know how dedicated I am to researching basketball.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I'm an aficionado at this.
Yes.
Okay, so
it's obvious.
So the answer to this, I really don't care.
Don't care.
I bet they still make millions.
No,
that's my prediction.
Okay, he's out on a limb, folks. But no, I wanted to see what I was trying to do is trap you into doing so that in like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, we can do those repeat videos
sure.
of like who was the guy we just watched the show?
Right, Daily Show.
John Daly.
Yep.
John, right?
Yes.
He had these clips.
Yep.
On there, and we'll get to this with
it's a great clip.
McCain.
Yep.
Is it John McCain?
John McCain. Yep.
You know what? I want to say John McClane, but he was the guy on Die Harder. He was the character.
He was.
John McClane. Well, actually, it's kind of the same guy.
But they're both fictitious.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been on TV forever. Anyway, okay, that's enough of that one. So let me X these off my list as we go. Wait, did we do the FIFA World Cup thing yet?
Oh, no.
You've been watching that.
Here, play the music. Oh, we don't have any.
I don't. Yeah. Ta-da, ta-da. Oh.
What are we going to talk about? Because, I have a world of knowledge about World Cup soccer.
Yeah, the deal is...
Incredibly so.
Okay, this one, you know who Colin Cowherd is.
He was on Saturday Night Live.
He's an ESPN, like Stephen A. Smith, and he's got his own show, I think.
Sure he does.
Maybe only on ESPN Radio, I don't know.
I'm taking your word for it.
Anyway, he's a guy, he sounds like, I think he's about our age, and he says, here's the deal. Baseball ultimately is not growing. A lot of the U.S. sports aren't, but soccer's growing by leaps and bounds. If you want to stay in the sports talk business, you better talk about, soccer. Yep. MLS soccer,
and
European Soccer League.
I got to admit, what is it? The World Cup's every 4 years?
I think it's every 4 years.
Okay.
My son is into it, Alex.
And so I got to tell you, as a middle-aged guy, I'm seeing lots and lots more attention to it this year than 4 years ago. Remarkably so.
Yes.
So, go! How's it going?
Yeah, that was the Mexican announcer. Go! And he goes on for hours. I think there's a TV commercial of him in a car with his kids.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, anyway. So I just thought this was... And the little tidbit effect I saw...
What was the point of talking about the World Cup?
Just to show that we don't know what the hell's going on
Perfect.
in the world.
Good.
Did I mission accomplished?
That was fantastic. I think I helped.
No, but the little point I had was supposedly 20,000 U.S. citizens went down there to visit, to see the game.
And?
Biggest single country with the most visitors.
And... Did you see J-Lo's outfit for the opening thing?
I did.
Who cares? About the rest of it?
I approve. Okay, so that's that.
So now, wait, let's go down the list of who we've offended so far.
Yeah, well, I think that covers the list. All right, I got a total one that's just interesting to me. I know the listeners, you'll be hearing the clicks right now. Did you see that Emirates Airlines canceled an order with Airbus for 70 wide-body planes. I can't remember the total value, but it's like lots of billions.
Okay.
Canceled. And they were firm orders. They were not, in that business they had to, they have a
stage
memorandum,
way out.
Yeah. And it's, it's a whatever.
Yep.
Option is, I think, the next closest to an order. Then there's an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, or some,
Right. Okay.
A multi-step process to actually place an order. They outright cancel them for billions of dollars, and the deal was, well, nobody knows. They just said, they're reviewing their fleet requirements or something. So the whole story hasn't come out, but it appears shortly before that, they ordered, I think I have my number right, 150 of the new 777s.
Uh-oh.
So the whole point is, for that size airplane, basically, they decided to go with the 777. That works for them. And I think what the deal is, Boeing basically designed that plane for them. It's a whole long thing. But huge dollars that would have gone to Airbus apparently will be going to Boeing. So I just thought that was interesting. Yeah. Those are big numbers. Really big numbers.
Said the aeronautical engineer.
Yes,
I just like to say.
That's why I kind of like that stuff.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Wait, I got to mention one other thing of kind of housekeeping stuff. My last blog post.
Okay, let's hear it.
It was about, what was the title? Further Socializing the Cost of Education. You remember not too long ago, Obama, I don't even know how to describe this, announced changes or modifications to the federal student loan program.
It's ongoing, but yes, there was some more stuff.
And the deal, he's going to do it by presidential fiat. It's not a deal where it goes to Congress. No approval required.
One strike at the pen.
Yep, just President Obama, done. This is the way it's going to be.
Power, baby.
And my post was about, because you hear comments, well, that's great. That's going to help a lot of people out. Mm-hmm. And no doubt, if you relieved me of my debt, that would help me out in the short term. But I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but my post was about, well, wait, think about all the ramifications to this. If you only look at the quote-unquote positives, well, then it all looks good.
Sure.
Right? I can make anything look good if we just don't look at the other stuff.
Sure.
And that was kind of the point of my post there. And if anybody has interest, might check that out. There were so many things.
Tell them where they find it, Tom.
Annoyingpeasantradio.wordpress.com.
There you go.
And there were so many things to blog about, and of course I didn't because I got stuck into reading books. I was telling Brad that I've been reading, I've been really into the reading lately, so it's kind of hard to write while you're reading.
Scholarly reading, I might admit.
Yeah, I find it interesting stuff.
Not the books you color in like I read, but...
But, so, the Bo Bergdahl thing
sure.
could have been a lot to write about.
We could talk for days. We were talking about that in the pre-show. We could talk for days about that cluster.
Yeah, and it's a cluster because I would make the case it's a cluster because the government was involved. Mm-hmm. So it's like redundant to say it's a cluster. Well, was the government involved? Yes. Well, it was a government action.
Right.
That's the way they do it.
Right.
Because it has to. But I did talk to a few of my friends about it. They had some good questions, and we had a couple good exchanges on it. So that was interesting. And that's something we can leave on the table if we want to chat about. But I would just point out that I didn't blog about that one. And you know what? A lot of people did. So there's plenty of material out there to read about what's going on.
So I know this isn't on our agenda that we're so rigid about.
Yeah.
But I thought of you again the other day. A couple of days ago, I was reading the news. And who knew? More people are going to raise the minimum wage, Tom.
Yes.
So some cities now have said, "Hey, screw you, federals. We're going on our own." I think a city in California and Colorado, I think, and then the as you would say, the federales are drawing around. I think Obama now is beating the drum that ought to be more than $10 an hour. And I love something that you taught me is, if it was such a good idea to do this, why would we stop at $10 an hour? Why wouldn't we just make it $1,000 an hour? If raising it a couple dollars an hour is better,
right,
then why not? If that's so great, let's make it great. Let's double it, triple it, quadruple it.
At $10 an hour, these people, I would assume, they're not going to be rich. Mm-hmm. If you work 40-hour weeks. I mean, I don't know how many hours there are in 24 times 7, whatever that is, 140 plus, 168 hours a week, whatever the number is. At $10 an hour, that's still not a whole ton of money.
Right.
So you might as well, if you're going to do it right.
Right.
It's just crazy.
And the reasoning that you've taught me is, what does that do to, what are the ramifications of that?
Exactly.
So if it sounds great, let's raise it all up, but what's the trickle-down effect? So up go goods, up go the price and cost of everything by that amount so people can still be profitable.
Absolutely. If you have a business owner and the price of labor goes up, he will have the incentive to use less labor. Mm-hmm. No different than if the price of gasoline goes up, right? And there's all this, some have elastic, which means they can, if the price of gas goes up, if somebody's in the right position, they can use almost no gas, right? If it goes up 2 cents, that's highly elastic. If it's inelastic, if it goes up $1 a gallon, but people kind of don't have a choice, which means it's inelastic, then the demand doesn't change much, right?
Yep.
You still have to go. But so if it's say, assume for a moment it's highly elastic, and you have people, I don't even know what minimum wage is, $7 an hour, something like that?
A little more than 7, I think.
Okay, and it jumps significantly, and it's possible there'll be a lot less employment. And of course, if you read Walter Williams and all these economists, they've been writing on this for months since this drumbeat has started. It's like every economist knows there'll be less employment as a result of low skill laborers. There'll be less of them in the marketplace as a result of raising the cost of labor. So, but it plays well politically, which is why a politician does everything they do.
We're taking care of our own. We want the best for everybody.
It sounds good on the surface.
Yep.
And if you do a moment of thinking, you might not be so convinced. But most people, as we know, don't do that.
Right.
So it just sounds great. So, yeah, that's an interesting one, to be sure. And again, I would point you to Walter Williams and go to his site. You just Google him and you can find him. And he's got all his articles archived. And he's got good titles there, so you'll know by the title of the article if he's talking about it. So interesting, anyway. One thing I just wanted to retouch on, I think you and I talked about the last time we did a show, was how people, will go, hey, I agree with you on this one, but I don't agree with you on that issue and on this issue. And we did kind of talk about it. But, it's not the issues per se where you are for a libertarian. And it is, because you want to be consistent, right? In that vein, that's important. But it's also important, it's the glue that ties them together. It's the philosophy behind them. It's the idea of freedom that matters. So, in other words, and I know it's going to sound absurd, but a libertarian could be almost on either side of any issue, depending on where freedom lands, right? It's not that he has a predisposition to say, hey, I got to be for gay marriage, or I have to be against gay marriage. A reasonable libertarian says, okay, on the line of freedom, where does this come down? Okay, and I guess that puts me on this side of the issue, right? Where, most people, I guess, are, I don't know, cherry pickers, right? I think this
I like
is
that one.
Yep.
I don't like that one.
Right.
But my team likes that one and doesn't, and likes that one too, but I don't like that one.
Yeah, and that's a hard one for a lot of people. I think that's a great point. People have their trouble deciding when their team is on one side and they would like to be on the other side. That's where they now, okay, I gotta work through this a little bit.
That's what's put me in trouble most of my adult life. Is
that's because you're for the Colts and not the Packers. Oh, wait a minute, did I get lost?
Wrong team.
Oh,
but as far as the primary two-party system that we have, that they're for this, but they're not for that, but they're for this, but not for that.
Absolutely. And Trigger's coming in the door, I think.
Watch out.
Either that or a thief is coming in.
Good. Let me get out my money.
Or maybe one and the same. Trigger the thief is coming. But he had sent me a comic a while ago that Tanya actually just posted on the Facebook page. It was a dude in a little cart, and the two walls, it was like too tight to fit in this little hallway. On the one side, it was Republicans on the front, I think, and the Democrats were. You saw this car's been smashing into these two things. And again, that's the whole problem with the left-right paradigm. People think that, I got choice A or choice B, that's where I am. There's a chair and a dining room. And I think that's one thing that's very difficult to get people to unlock that and think, well, wait a minute. The real choice is between freedom or slavery. That's what the argument should be about. And properly for libertarians, that is what the argument's about. And that's why, some people look at libertarians and see them as inconsistent. Well, holy cow, how come you're for this, but you're against that? And you say, well, if you give me a second, I'll explain to you why both of them I'm on the side of freedom. But as you know, a lot of arguments or discussions don't get that far.
That's right. Because
that's when you're not for my team.
Yep, right. I can't talk to you because you're not for what I think.
Right.
And I don't want to hear about it.
And it's not really what you think; it's what your team says you're supposed to think.
Right. Whatever, whichever one it is.
Right.
That would mean that you'd have to have conviction for that team, and that's also lacking a lot of times.
Yes.
But that's what my team says, so I'm going to go along with that.
Yes. So but Trigger stopped in. You might as well say hello.
Hello.
Wow. What a radio appearance.
Wasn't that great?
Yeah, no.
Boy, he's excited to hear
How are we going to top that, Brad?
I don't know.
The guy comes in here and lays that on us. Oh, God. Anyway, so we did that. And here's another one I wanted to talk about that we talked about before. The story, yes, I did put this one on the Facebook. The Elon Musk thing.
Yep.
Who's the Tesla guy.
Yep.
Right.
And that news broke a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it was. I think it was last week or something. SpaceX is one. I don't know how many companies he had. He's gotten probably a ton of them. He's got a couple bucks. But the story came out, and I put it on the Facebook page. So if you have any interest, go there. That he said he was very disappointed. I guess I'm recapping that article very quickly. He's basically said he's very disappointed with the lack of advancement in the engineering of electric cars in alternative transportation. Did you see that? No.
Yeah.
And so he wants to help spur it on, right? Do what?
You'd be disappointed, not disappointment.
Oh, sorry, disappointed. Did I misspeak? I'm disappointed that I misspoke. How's that? That's why Trigger's here tonight.
Yeah.
my grammar coach.
Because he talks good.
Yeah, because he talks real good.
They know me.
So to spur on more innovation, he came forward and made the statement that that Tesla would not enforce their patents that they have that are associated with, of course, Tesla.
Yep.
And I just found it interesting. I mean, for a number of things. It's like, maybe a guy's learning a lesson, and maybe he is. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's a smart guy, really smart guy. I don't know the man.
So for those that are listening to us that have not heard our position, broadly, you're not in favor of patents.
Correct. And the reason is because they're a violation of your property rights.
Okay.
And we've done shows
we
on
have
this.
lots of shows on this, and I was very slow to understand this because patents seem like an important thing for me. If it's something that I create, I should have the rights to it.
It's mine.
It's mine. That's right. But it's more the execution of how patents are enforced.
And what that means, if you have an idea, and let's say there's two ways, right? I could independently come up with the same idea, and I'm only 10 years late. Say,
yep.
I can't do my idea. I didn't even hear of your idea.
Yep.
Right? But I can't do it now because the first thing these guys do, this is a standard operating procedure. Check if it's been patented. Mm-hmm. They do a patent search, right? But in the end of it, if it is in fact you patented it, I can't use my property to use my idea, mm-hmm. right? And the other way is, what if I learn of your idea? Now I know it, just like you know it, but I can't use it.
Yep.
Right? And that's the interesting thing about knowledge. When libertarians say knowledge or ideas are abundant, and that's why they're different than, I don't know, my laptop here, you can't have it. Why? Because it's my property. You can only have it if we engage in an exchange, or I just give it to you. Right?
Yep.
But it has to be voluntary. It's not giving it to you if you hold a gun to my head and say, hey, your laptop or your life.
Right.
Then you can't walk away and say, hey, Tom gave it to me.
Right.
Well, no, I didn't give it to you. It was stolen. You used coercive force to get it, right? But so that's the two ways that this happens with patents, stuff that's been patented. Once I know it, we can... The difference I was trying to make, the distinction between knowledge or ideas and physical property, just loosely use the term real property, is that this laptop is either mine in here or it's somebody else's and elsewhere, right? It's mutually exclusive. It can't be in two places at once. Mm-hmm. The difference is the idea for that mousetrap that you came up with, once you tell me, it's in two places. Mm-hmm. Right? And if I tell Trigger, now it's in three places. Mm-hmm. Right? So, yeah. It's not one thing. It's like, and the reason it should be, they say, for most part, libertarians use in the case of argument is air. Air is abundant. Well, it's not always abundant. It's not abundant underwater, mm-hmm. right? And it's not abundant in a place where there's no air, like you're in a chamber.
Or in the refrigerator where I hide.
For a while, it kind of runs out, right? So there are I would call them slight exceptions. We may argue about that. And that's why there's no fight over property rights of air, right?
Right.
And that's why ideas are similar, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
They're abundant, and many libertarians have argued that. But it's interesting those differences and why they're important, and why how's my idea any different than this laptop? I came up with the idea; it's mine, just like that laptop is yours. But they're different because this very laptop can't be, as far as we know, replicated at no cost.
Okay, so reel us back in and talk about Tesla and
thank you. That's why you're here.
No purpose other than that.
But you realize that Elon Musk understands this, and the media caught on to this, because obviously this is a little different. I mean, not entrepreneur tycoons, not everybody, all of them are saying this.
So this is the dude that owns Tesla and
is making stuff happen.
Yeah, he is.
Right? I mean, he's an innovator. He's really growing his business. And he's saying he recognized that patents are slowing down the innovation. So he's not going to enforce them, his company.
And your point is, but yet, he has all these patents.
Yes. And the trouble there is that's not worth anything, I would argue. Not legally, because in the system that we currently have, he has a legal enforcement of it, and he's got word of mouth saying, I won't enforce it. Well, you'd be crazy to infringe on that patent without some kind of legal release from him or his organization, right? So the patent still exists. If he really didn't want the patent, he would go back there and cancel them. But the problem is someone else would go in there and do it, and then he wouldn't be able... He's probably better off getting the patent and then signing some blanket release, if that's even possible.
Well, and so there are precedents in some of the code and some of the computer sourcing, Linux and so forth, where they've said open source, have at it, go nuts.
Yes, but I don't know if they've had a patent and released it,
and I don't know that either,
or how they developed it and made it whatever they call it, Commons or Creative Commons or something.
So,
like
do you
that.
think this is a smart idea, or what's your point with them?
My point is the media picked it up from him, because he's a muckety muck, he's a businessman, an entrepreneur, he's a high visibility guy. But you could go to LouRockwell.com, you could go to Mises.org, and these guys are saying this every day of the week in their articles, and it's in their books and stuff. No pub, right? And what I'm saying is these guys are making the philosophically correct argument against patents. That gets no readership. Nobody cares. Nobody listens. It doesn't mean a thing. Elon Musk says this. Oh, look what he said.
Where typically, though, he would be driving a stake in somebody's heart and running them over to try to say, wait a minute, you're infringing on my patent rights.
Right.
This is my toys. I'm taking them and going home.
And I don't follow him closely enough. I'm assuming in his business world, he's done that numerous times. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong there.
Right.
So
that's what normally happens.
I mean, I've heard Steve Jobs and Apple had quite a few spats with... First with Microsoft, right? And now more lately with Samsung. And I'm sure there's 1,000 people in between.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not well schooled on that. But that's the nature of that type of business. You're constantly innovating. You're constantly having to patent. You're constantly fighting. I mean, what did we did the show on the patent trolls?
Right.
Where people are just buying them and holding them. And
Which is a good point. We should tell folks that you can find us on iTunes, our archive shows.
Yes.
Just search Annoying Peasant Radio on iTunes, and you can listen to. We did a show on patent trolls. We did several shows on Monsanto.
Yes.
And Monsanto
soybeans
remains in the news all the time.
Yeah.
It's getting worse.
Yeah, I mean, they're a big outfit. That's going to happen. And they're at Blog Talk Radio, too. You go
That's
there.
True.
blogtalkradio.com and search for Annoying Peasant Radio. You can find all our archives there.
So if you think we're crazy, that will ensure that you know that we're crazy. But listen to those shows, because, again, I was slow on the uptake. Wait a minute, patents are important, Tom. That's how we do things. And Tom's... help me see the light. Dun, da, 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 go!
See,
beat him with it.
I'm nothing but a public service here. A true public servant.
See, that was for the World Cup, my goal thing.
Yeah, I follow.
Yeah, see?
I follow you. Let's see, I'm Xing off stuff on our list. So we kind of did the Tesla on Elon Musk. Interesting, because a lot of people hold him in such high regard, and maybe rightly so. Again, I'm not commenting there. I'm just saying... wow, it made a splash. It's on the Facebook page.
Okay.
I don't know if I mentioned that.
Facebook, search Annoying Peasant Radio.
Yeah, how does it go? Facebook.com/Annoying Peasant Radio. Right?
You just search Annoying Peasant Radio. You'll find us.
Oh, another one is...
like us, by the way. Like us. We like it when you like us.
Yes, we're trying to get up to the 200 mark.
We're lonely, so we need you to like us.
Since I've been driving a lot lately,
Yeah.
I've been listening to the radio.
Really?
Yes.
You can work the dials and stuff now?
Well, I can't walk and talk, but I can listen and drive at the same time. Well, some
All
people
right,
already
yeah.
can't drive anyway, but that's another one.
Okay, all right.
I happen to listen to Rush Limbaugh. But, by the way, what was the story? Oh, the other one I think I put on the Facebook page was the Hillary Clinton one.
Sure.
That she changed her position. That might even be on
And she's getting a little pissy about this, too.
Yeah.
She's getting called on the carpet for it by some people, and she's getting all huffy about it.
Well, the one I put on there, it was an NPR chick interviewed her.
Right.
Chick, that's proper language.
Yeah,
right? Hey, where's my grammar, man?
Offensive,
Yeah.
bad. No goal for you.
You want my grammar?
It was Terry Gross.
Is that who it was?
Yeah, it was. NPR listener. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Fresh Air.
Fresh Air. Not Central Time. I listen to Central Time.
Yeah, I don't like that show. But Fresh Air, Terry Gross, she's very good. I like her. And so she had
Hillary on.
Yep, Madam Hillary.
And she kind of pressed her she was pushing this, like, why did you make this change? Well, the change was back in the day. I don't know when that. I mean,
not too long ago.
She was against
same-sex marriage.
Is that the whole?
We're trying to hold it politically correct.
Yeah. Okay. She was against same-sex marriage.
Yep.
And now she is for it. And just recently, and I think if I remember right, it actually came out maybe formally in her book that she just released.
Right.
And that's, this is all part of the book tour, follow-up, more pub.
But she hasn't decided if she's running yet.
Yes. Well, I'm telling you what, she probably hasn't completely.
Oh, I mean,
seriously.
She's following the script of anybody that's going to run for any office is to write a book, get out in front of everybody, and I'm going to run.
Yes, but what she's doing, here's my... we're off the topic here, but this is interesting.
Yeah.
We're always in the ditch.
Yeah.
I'm saying what she's doing is she's doing just what you said, the script. Write the book.
Yep.
Do the tour.
PR 101.
Yes. And check out the feedback and continue to poll, right?
Sure.
Because she's come out with a couple new positions, right? So she's got to know how well received they are. And I'm assuming she came out with those positions because the idea was to enhance her polling.
Of course.
Right? Which she firmly
hone
denies,
the positions that are going to be beneficial to you.
That's right. And if you have positions that you maybe change to that aren't going to poll well, of course you don't mention them. Right? I mean, come on. She's not that dumb. I mean, she knows that, right? So... this is part of that process to see how it goes. And then I assume, who's the guy, Brat, who just won. He beat out, was he the majority leader?
Oh, yeah. Eric, what's his name?
Cantor.
Yeah,
right. He wiped out. So who knows what he's going to, obviously he's going to be, campaigning, etc.
Right.
But, she can poll against...
Majority leader in the House, isn't he?
Yeah, wiped out. Well, it was.
Right.
Well, he is technically still. But
for another couple of days.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's gone.
Yeah.
But she's going to be polling in cases like that, against that, to see what happens in those districts, is my point when I say against it. I should say, to see where people are in that kind of district that are supposedly heavily conservative, right, which is this guy. So all this stuff is happening, and she's observing. She's got her whole team figuring this all out.
Yep.
And by the way, that he's a professor. One of his things is property rights. So he's not all bad. I mean, he's actually a little bit interesting to the libertarian world. Anyway, so she's going through this whole process to poll. She's trying to find out, who knows, the next guy comes out with a book. Jeb Bush. I have no idea if he's coming out with a book or not, but, he might, and he'll do the same thing, and then she can see how his polling numbers look, right? This whole thing, and even if she's already decided, in fact, to run, which... I'm inclined to agree with you that that's in the bag. She can now learn what to stress and what to downplay.
How was it received?
Right.
Oh, I'm avoiding that now.
Or I say it like this, not like that. Right. The whole political shtick is what's going on.
Right.
And so that's part of the interesting game, to see what goes on there. If you're interested really in the political world, which I happen not to be so interested in it, but I just raise it because I know a lot of people are interested. But we were talking about Terry Gross. Terry Gross. And you got to see, if you have any interest at all, you got to go look at that article on our Facebook page, because she tries to sidestep that issue of, well, didn't you just, change? And she said, no, it was the right time. Mm-hmm. Well, what does that mean? Of course, the political climate is ready for it, right? So it's a political change. She said all these other weird descriptions that didn't describe anything.
And Terry called her out.
Yeah. And she asked her, must have been 3, 4, 5 times. And then Hillary got a little snippy with her.
No, she accused her of being belligerent.
Yeah, you're trying to, twist my words around, she says, or something like that.
Right.
So I thought it was kind of funny. So anybody who wants a little humor.
Okay, so for those of you, I'm gonna go on one of my rants. So for those of you that may or may not agree with our Tom's especially, and mine as well, about liberty, listen to what we just said about the current political system. So number one, both in Eric Cantor's case and in Hillary's case, on a grander scale, they're working on what they can do to get to say what people want to hear enough to vote and stay in the thing.
Yes.
Stay in office.
That's the political game. That's what politicians do. And that's why
it's not necessarily what they're have conviction about.
Of
it's
course.
what's going to keep them in the game.
Absolutely. You comb your hair, you part your hair on the other side if the pollsters tell you you'll get more votes if you do that.
Right?
And some people are kind of surprised by that, or they say, no, that man's a genuine, good moral character.
Yeah. A man of character,
He wouldn't do that stuff. And what I'm saying is that system creates the incentive to do that.
Yes.
Right? And so people do, in fact, have the tendency to do it once they enter that game.
Yep.
So when you hear the president's not playing politics on this one or whatever because he's just doing this for the good of the country, that just makes me laugh. It's like, you got to be kidding. He's a politician. Mm-hmm. What's a politician to do? Mm-hmm. Come on, it never happens. It absolutely never happens. I know people will look at me and say, you're cynical. Think about it. Yep. As much as I'll reveal right here on this stage live.
Here we go.
That I was a conservative Republican.
Holy cow!
What year is it? 2014. Say about the year till about the year 2000.
Okay.
I don't even remember when my enlightenment happened.
Can you hear the people turning off their iTunes and their podcasts right now? I can hear it's like a sucking sound.
I didn't hear that, but the birds did stop chirping there for a second.
I don't know.
They were like, what? So the point, and the point is, I believe I well understand the conservative position. I also believe I happen to understand I don't think you have to say you're part of that team to understand what's on that team, mm-hmm. what that team's about. Mm-hmm. But I don't think I would have listened to the argument so well back then. Obviously, that's why I was where I was, mm-hmm. right? Until you become convinced of something else, you're convinced that where you are is the right place, obviously.
Right.
I guess maybe some people, my dad was, so that's why I am.
Right.
I've heard that a few times, which kind of freaks me out for a whole other reason.
Exactly.
But, so, there isn't just this left-right paradigm, or when I say isn't just, what I really would make the case for, that's the wrong paradigm. That's just some made-up bunch of crap. The real issue is, should you be free, or should you be enslaved, or in serfdom, or unfree? Right? Okay. That's the question. Okay, and you say, well, that has nothing to do with...
We're free today, but we've been down that road a million times. Okay, go ahead.
People will say, well, that has nothing to do with the question of gay marriage.
Right.
Well, actually, it does.
Completely.
Yes. So if I wanted to marry a goat, should I be allowed to marry a goat? And the whole question is absurd. Why should I be allowed or not allowed? Like, who do I ask? Who am I supposed to ask?
Yep.
Right? It's a crazy notion. I'm not advocating anybody marry a goat here.
Goats are great.
Yeah, I like goats. Well, no, I don't like goats. I just don't want to go down that road. Right? But that's
more listeners turning off.
People think there has to be an authority, and that's a whole discussion, and we should have a whole show on that. I'm rereading The Law. We talked about that. Was one of them. And I just love that book by Friedrich Bastiat. And it's a short one, and that's the thing. Anyway, but we'll get more into that later. But the whole Hillary thing, I think we kind of...
And my other beef with this entire conversation, the entire part about Hillary believing and saying one thing and then going the other is, no one's allowed to change their mind. In this world, I'm sure no one's ever changed their mind about everything. So she is supposed to be superhuman and not change her mind either. And is it not progressive for somebody to see a different side of a given issue and go, I guess I never thought of it that way? And isn't it come from good, intelligent dialogue and discussion and give and take and listening that people should be allowed to change their mind?
Yeah, I'd say through...
I'm not accusing her of being ethical about this. I'm saying what's unethical or what's unfair is that we're jumping her case for changing her mind.
She changed her mind because if she runs for president, it'll get her more votes.
Right.
And we could say that.
About, she don't care.
There's no learning going on there.
It's a vote. That's all she cares about.
We could say that. But maybe, I doubt it, but maybe she said, you know what? I think that I was wrong.
Yes, I don't know what I didn't read. I didn't happen to read her book. Of the 3 books I told you I read in the last 2, that was not one of them.
Okay,
but might shock you.
But you've changed your mind once in the world.
Just once.
Yeah,
just once. No, that's the thing about the world of the state and the world of politics. What normally seems like a good thing to the world is bad in those environments. And when I say that, is just think about in the world of politics, a great accusation to make against your competitor is to say he's a flip-flopper.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying some people do change their positions, and if they're politicians, almost all, I would say, do it for just as Trigger says, to gain votes.
Right.
Right? Because they're politicians. Like, when I wasn't a politician, I didn't have to gain votes. Now I'm running,
and
so
is
I
it
changed
also
my position.
possible that somebody changed their position to stay in office because
Yes.
their voters changed their position?
Absolutely. But the real reason to change your position, and when I say the real, I would argue the only reason to change your position, I think, is because you learned something.
Yes, that's my point.
And that's what you addressed that by saying listening was one of the things. I would say yes, and that's how you learn. You listen, you read, you think, and then maybe you can learn.
Investigate.
Right.
Is this an important thing for me? Some of my friends say, "Yeah, I'm with what you're saying on liberty, whatever else, but I can't know everything about every given issue." Cool. Neither can I.
Right. All I got to know about is freedom.
Yes, and that's something that you've taught me about liberty and going, okay, well, the others are very inconsistent. The liberty and freedom is consistent.
Yeah, which is, I would also argue, the third word in there that's synonymous with those is justice.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm throwing in my shtick here from the law that I've been rereading. And that's really the whole. If you don't want to use those words, freedom, liberty, just use the word justice,
or a just system.
Right.
Where our current system, we all agree among us here, is unjust.
So let that word justice, injustice, be your arbiter of any position.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't. You can use those words, and you can really not do any research on an issue and come down on the wrong side or the side of injustice, and you just call it justice.
Yep.
I mean, you really got to analyze it, and the question becomes, what is justice? And we talked about this only a billion times on the show. The real short version is the non-aggression principle and property rights, born of self-ownership. It's a whole long shtick, but, right?
Again, check our archives if you want more explanations about that. I'm sure we'll talk about them in the future too.
That will tell you what it is unjust or just. One of the quickies from Bastiat, he talks about, he uses more often, he uses all these terms, but more often he uses the term socialism. And he says, how do you determine what socialism, what isn't? And his short answer is basically when the state does something essentially that a private person couldn't do. In other words, it would be illegal for me to do it, but the state does it. Basically, that's
great. I like that.
His Walter Williams has written on that many times. It's like, well, when the state does it, it's for the greater good. It's for other stuff. Mm-hmm. The point is, and these things that if you think there should be public education, and the libertarian, the freedom arguer supporter comes forward and says there should be. Public education is a violation of property rights and so much more. Mm-hmm. That's just one of them, right? So then the person who's arguing against you typically says, so you're against education. And my first retort is, no, you're not listening. I'm against public education. I'm actually for education. No, I think we want to be dumb as animals, right? But that's the common argument used against you. If you say, well, I'm not for Social Security, I'm not for welfare. You don't want to help people.
Not for abortion, I'm not for whatever.
Right.
Your rights.
Whatever. Right? And that's the thing they use just to attack you. Mm-hmm. That's not true. Again, saying in the case of public education, listen closely. The public part is the problem.
Yep.
Right? Because it takes from one person and gives it to another. And Bastiat even goes further than that. It's very interesting. If you stole my money, you would have to, in a sense, it'd be on your conscience. You actually stole the money. Right? Mm-hmm. Whether you have a conscience or not, we could argue about that, right? But in fact, that's the case. But if you get it from my money from the state, you didn't actually do the stealing. Mm-hmm. You didn't. So now it makes it more respectful to engage in that activity.
Or some might even say ethical.
Right? Yes. So if you did it, if you came and took my money and paid for your kid's education and it all came out and somewhat impartial third party arbitrated, they say, hey, you stole bottom line. And you said, but wait, I wanted to educate my kid. They say, yeah, the underlying problem is The whole thing started with theft. Well, here's the point. The state does just exactly that. And that's a good thing. It's for the greater good. It's for the betterment of our society. Well, how come just because some guys in, I don't know, uniforms, suits, badges, whatever they all have, when they do it, it's for the better good. When you do it, you go to prison. Right? That's... And most people, you know, when you first...
Sounding radical, Tom.
Yeah, well,
Watch out.
I'm just going to go there and say, hey, if you're saying I'm an anarcho-capitalist, they're like, anarchy? Oh, you're crazy. You want all these bad things to happen to mankind. It's like, no, think about it. What we want is man to act in accordance with his nature. And that was a little tease on my book, but we'll leave that go. But interesting topic.
So in the end, the moral, I think, to my points are that Tom, I think, made throughout this is we like it when people think. We like to challenge people to think about their positions. Why do you believe what you believe? Maybe you listen to us and go, holy crap, I'm sick of hearing that Brad guy because he doesn't say anything that I believe in. Why? Why is that? And why are you convicted that I'm so crazy and you're so right? I don't care. I'm great with what you think. But why do you think it?
That's the interesting thing, to get people to think. Lisa just texted me, it's Trigger. He's sitting here with us tonight. So, and in case anyone missed that, we got Trigger sitting in here with us tonight. We have a third party, so we're having fun. Anyway, so that kind of takes care of Hillary, don't you?
Yeah, we killed a bunch of time on that. Sorry, Tom.
We killed her. Actually, the big issue of the night probably is the Iraq issue.
Here we go.
My dinner.
Where's my dinner? Guys, just got food on its mind. Yeah. And actually, that's quite an interesting one. And obviously, we're not going to do the whole thing justice tonight.
What's going on in the news is that now, after we've gotten out of Iraq, after we've withdrawn, I don't know, are we fully withdrawn from there?
They claim, I've heard we are.
Maybe some of our contractors are still there. Who the heck knows with things. But in the end, Iraq is going to basically civil war.
Yes.
After we've been engaged there for however many years and however many casualties, deaths, what have you, billions and millions of dollars.
Yes. And mostly people highlight the casualties of the U.S. soldiers
you're very correct.
A few of the contractors.
You're very correct.
But look at the numbers of casualties on the Iraqi side.
And that was actually something, just as a side, you know, we just had the anniversary of D-Day. And I heard one report that was actually very profoundly telling about how many French casualties there were, and how many just
unbelievable numbers.
Tens of thousands.
Not to say that it's ultimately
not taking position. I'm just saying Tom's point is great that we look at only our own, and we're looking at some generations that have been wiped out over there.
Yeah, so that's one of and the number that was thrown out was 500,000. That was the deal. The number that was approached to Madeleine Albright, I can't remember what, years ago,
right? And
she said it was worth it. That was part of one of our shows too. So
sure,
check that out. But the massive number of people that were killed, and now just to give people a story, this group, I don't know if they call themselves, but I've heard them dubbed ISIS. What the heck are
I don't know.
Islamic something, Syria and Iran or something it is.
Okay.
I can't remember what ISIS is off the top of my head at the moment. But supposedly these guys were part of Al-Qaeda or just associated with them, and they sort of got denounced from them because they were like some bad dudes. Now, what do you got to do to be bad dudes?
It's all relative.
Yeah. So they're the ones, and I think obviously their deal is they want to somehow unite Syria with what we now know as Iraq. And if I have my sect correct in the Islam faith, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. They don't happen to like the Shiites, I believe.
Okay.
So I assume they're more Sunnis. I don't.
I think you're right. But doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
For the sake of things.
So these guys are coming from the north, going south, and they've gotten as far as Mosul, I believe. Maybe I haven't heard the news today. Maybe they're in Baghdad, or they're going to be working on it or whatever. So the controversy now is what to do. What should the United States government do? And Yeah, and that's a great point. Ron Paul wrote an article today, and we just looked at that. I showed that to Brad. I'm trying to find it here. Yeah, it's entitled, "Haven't We Done Enough Damage in Iraq?" And I think where most people are that I would argue aren't libertarian, the thing is, well, here's the deal. Here's where we are. What should we do? I hate using those pronouns, but that's how most people pose the question to me.
Tom's doing air quotes.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody saw that anyway. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, what should we do now? And I've used this poor example many times, but I'm not very smart, so it's the one I like. It's if your parent tells you don't carry the glass of red wine over the white carpet, right? And eventually, and you continue to do so. If you do it enough, eventually, one time you'll spill the stuff, right? And then the question will be, what do we do now? Mm-hmm. And your parent or whoever was disciplining you will say, well, I don't really know. That's why I told you don't do this in the first place, right? Because we're now in a really bad situation. Mm-hmm. Okay,
that was then. This is now.
Yeah, this is the case. Mm-hmm. And then usually what happens to me when people know I'm an anarcho-capitalist, they say, yeah, well, what's the answer? Mm-hmm. Okay, and first of all, of course, the psychology is all wrong. Everybody thinks, well, if you're the anarchist, you have to know everything. And you probably still won't convince me. But if I find one thing that you say, well, I don't know, or I'm not sure, or, see, it can't work. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what they say. But the real answer is the one they don't like, which is, we shouldn't be here now. The reason we're here is because of the mistake we made in
95.
2000, whatever.
Yeah, whatever the date was, right? When we first went in, that was the error, and that's the point of Ron Paul's article. And again, I encourage anyone to read it. It was on LouRockwell.com. I'll put it on the Facebook page, but there's a section here I wanted to remember. Where the heck is it? Okay, here we go. He's talking here. Okay, yeah, 2003 is the year. He says here, and because we listened to the John
Daly
thing.
Daily Show.
Yeah, the Daily Show. We'll put that up. That's
hilarious.
Yeah, and interesting.
He's brilliantly funny, and he takes sides, but the clip we're going to put up shows the great inconsistency, which is why I brought it to Tom. Shows the great inconsistency of politicians, and heck, they're flopping.
Yes,
left and right, and they're so driving their own agendas.
Yes, their agendas, and in a lot of cases, in the case of John McCain, who I'll call McClain from now on, is beating the war drum, and we'll talk about that in a second. Yep. But so the experts, most of them, I would argue for sure, the conservatives and some others, I've seen more conservatives than others, is they're the experts. And here, so I'm going to read this very short paragraph from Ron Paul's story. He says, these same foreign policy experts who lied to us in the Iraq War are now telling us we must re-invade Iraq to deal with the disaster caused by their invasion, right? So the invasion caused this ultimate calamity, and he's saying now the answer is invade again, right? That's what they're saying. They cannot admit they were wrong about the invasion being a cakewalk. That would pay for itself. I remember hearing that with what we do, it's going to pay for self-funding. We're not putting money over there, because that was one of the things. Mm-hmm. So they want to blame last week's events on the 2011 U.S. withdrawal from Iraq. And John Daly has clips within that clip that we're going to put on there, showing these guys saying, hey, no, we have to go in there and go back there and restabilize the country, and all these words they use, right? Right. So all I'm saying is that what Ron Paul's saying here is obviously true. He says, but the trouble started with the 2003 invasion itself, not the 2011 troop withdrawal. And that's, ultimately, what is he driving at? We should have never been there in the first place. We wouldn't have the wine spilt on the white carpet, right? Yep. Anyone who understands cause and effect should understand this. Okay. And that, we talked about before the show even a little about patriotism and a few other things that, and the Rush Limbaugh thing. about any time, me listening here the last few days because I've been driving a lot, and anytime there's criticism of the United States, and especially by Obama, when he says, hey, we did this wrong, we shouldn't have done this. Whether you agree or disagree with him is not the issue here at the moment, but whenever he said that, Limbaugh is just constantly on them that you can't do that. It's like, what do you mean I can't criticize?
Well,
that
basically, if President Obama wears a red tie, well, there you go.
Right.
There's another problem.
Right.
Right. He wore lace-up shoes. Oh, there's another problem.
The only way you can come to better understanding is, I shouldn't say the only way. One of the more useful ways is to see something, and when you at least think it's an error, to criticize, right? I mean, it's better to think about it more in advance, but if you do, you can use that as a learning lesson. So there's nothing wrong with criticizing something, especially if he's in defense of freedom. Okay, I do have a problem with you when you're defending tyranny. Okay, we can get in that, but that unto itself, in a free society, you should be able to criticize. You might get ostracized for it, and that's fine.
You might, and the same in your social life, in your personal life.
Absolutely. If you had a friend, if I come over and you hated my shirt, typically the first thing I go, hey, how's it going? And I go, your shirt sucks, right? Because why? It doesn't work. To maybe eventually you might coach me on the side. We get to be really good friends. You go, Tom, that color just doesn't work for me, and I'm trying to help you here.
And I'm such a fashionista. That's exactly the side of thing I would take up.
But that, by the way, that's the only reason I did befriend Brad, is because I'm looking for some fashion tips.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, it's interesting. I think Ron Paul again has nailed it on the head in his article. You should check that out.
So your point with what you just read is, the time to ask that question is not now.
Right.
It was back in 2003.
The mess has been created. We should have been thinking beforehand and say, hey, we should maybe not step into this pie of crap here. And the point is not to, I know Rush Limbaugh is one of my biggest listeners. I know he's intently listening.
He sure is.
The point is not the criticism. The point is to understand that, okay, wait, next time we're faced with at least a somewhat similar situation, can we not look back on this experience? And people will say the experience is, well, because it didn't turn out, that's why we should or shouldn't do it. That's really not the case for this. Again, the case is to be made for liberty or for justice or tyranny and injustice. And Ron Paul's saying that case was clear then. That's the case you should use, or the analysis tool you should use for that next thing. Right? In other words, as much as I really dislike saying this, the case for war is not always wrong. In defense, it is legitimate. But you have to look at that, right? You can't just say, well, the tactics look at what we did in Iraq, and it didn't work out, so we'll never do that again. Well, if the circumstances are somewhat different, that the case is about justice or injustice, we should side with justice wherever that puts us.
So I don't know if I'm going to make this point right or not, but
wait, are you being that Terry Gross and I'm being the Hillary now? Are you trying to twist my words?
So let's use Rush Limbaugh. So a Republican president took us into war in 2003.
Yes.
Right? That's what on Rush's team.
Yeah.
So I bet he was all over the airwaves saying, this is why we should be doing this, this is why we should be doing this, this is why we should be doing this.
I did.
And dare those Democrats to possibly ever question the validity of all this, right? But today,
okay,
is he not taking the opposite stance? Has he not flopped?
Yeah, he'd probably tell you I did not flop because I was for the invasion and I'm for these experts for the reinsertion of troops. So I'm for the same thing. That's how he would argue it, I think.
But he's for it with one of the opposing team going about and doing the same thing.
Well, yeah, he's not for what...
and I don't care which team you're on, but I'm just saying this whole thing is inconsistent.
Absolutely it is. Yes, and it's great to point that out so people see this, because I think people would, if Rush would make that case, I think most people who are conservatives who listen to Rush would certainly side with him.
Right.
And say, yeah, of course.
Right.
You're basically for killing people over there, and you're still for killing people, so you're consistent.
Heroic.
And you got to give John McClane credit for that.
That's right.
We talked about this before the show a little bit. I mean, come on, this is a guy... this is my case against John McCain here. Just one
McClane?
McClane, sorry.
Yippee-ki-yay.
Mother. A man who's experienced what he experienced He's laughing now. I already lost him. But we talked about this before. Because he was a prisoner of war, and I'm going to say probably not treated the best.
No.
In that situation.
Had a tough go of it.
He gets an automatic pass. It seems that when he says, we need to go kill people.
Because
bang.
I know firsthand
right.
that
that we should kill people. I don't know.
Right.
Right? He seems to get, everybody's like, yeah, well, we need to go.
Right.
McLean says, let's go. Right? Yep. It's like, there's like no discussion. There's no debate there. It's like, well, he says we should go. We got to go. Because he's the man who knows. I think he gets that pass, which seems crazy. Because again, he's the guy who was, everybody's a victim of war. I don't know how to, he was a prisoner of war. He went through a particularly tough situation.
Tortured and mistreated tremendously.
Yeah. Wouldn't it come to him and go, it didn't change my mind, right? It didn't get my thinking to change from where I was before. Well, and in fact, it may have hardened his thinking more.
The war that I was tortured in 40 years ago, or 30 years ago, whatever it is, right. 40 years ago, boy, that didn't work out so well. So, because in the end, we left and everything just went ripshot again. But let's go try that again.
In the words of Yuri Maltsev, the one lesson of history is it teaches us nothing. Right?
Yes,
we do this time and time again. And my point on John McClane was, the one guy...
I'm working on my diehard lines. I can't come up with any more diehard lines because there's some good ones.
But the one guy who you would think should have learned something from this and said, hey, this does not work. So why are we killing innocent people? Why are we destroying wealth, destroying property in the process? It makes no sense to go forward with this. He's the one guy who was constantly drumbeating for it.
Yeah. And there he was firsthand, front row seat participant.
Yes.
And victim.
And I would surmise that his argument would be, in Vietnam, we just didn't execute properly. If we would just tweak our tactics, our strategy, or whatever he would say, then it would be... Well, it doesn't change the principle of the engagement of war or not to engage.
Our uniforms would have been blue.
Yes.
Then we'd have kicked them.
Yeah, it's just... So, Liz, read Ron Paul's article on this. The mistake was made he cites in 2003, not in the withdrawal in 2011. And I know a lot of people can't get their mind around that. They know there's a mess there. And the stinking thing of this whole deal is now more innocent people are being killed, right, currently, needlessly. This does not need to happen, but... For some reason, mankind's been doing this throughout history. I know people are going to say, well, you're just bashing the United States. No, this is, the Romans were on their conquest. I'm no history buff. I just know this has been happening throughout mankind. We just can't seem to stop.
Yeah.
Well, we're trying to do just like the Romans.
Right. It's the same thing.
We're going back in because we don't want our democratic government we started in Iraq to get overthrown.
Well, our puppets.
Yeah.
We don't want
them gone.
Right. We want those guys in there. And even I read something, I don't even know if it was in this Ron Paul article. One guy was saying even Hussein, who was not a good guy, and it always seems redundant that people have to say that.
Right.
I mean, he kind of held that country together. In other words, I'm not saying the guy was no great man, but the stuff that's going on right now wasn't happening. Now, was he torturing and killing people? Yes.
Sounds like it.
And here's the trouble.
He kept everybody out.
Yes, he did.
They didn't want to be tortured.
And guys who were in there that he didn't like, I mean, he politically imprisoned them and executed them and tortured them, and he did lots of bad things. And the trouble with this whole thing, because Hussein got put in by the U.S., and, it's such a long-term mess. Where do you start the history lesson? That's the thing that debate can never end, is where do you start, right? Because I can build my case starting at one point to make it look in favor to me. Right. You started earlier, and then it looks in favor, right? How long do we go back?
Debate.
Right.
Right.
The bottom line is, if Hussein death was less with him, is that better? Yes. Is that where you want to be? No. You want to be at no death.
Right.
Right? But the thing is, the continual intervention, in this case by the United States, I would argue, has just ultimately made things continually worse. That's not a good recipe in my world. Right? And I'm almost positive, Ron Paul, that's his case. As we're saying, we're just continually, messing around there, making it worse.
So, in the news, as you're watching the news, which is the ongoing story, what do we do, what do we do, what do we do?
Yes.
You and I were talking earlier that, for us to be asking ourselves that question, we have such limited options. We have painted ourselves in this corner and created this circumstance.
Yes.
And so now we have very, very, very limited options.
Check this out. I think this is interesting. His closing paragraph. I wasn't originally going to read this, but since you brought this up, I think it makes sense because you talk about our options, because that is what's being discussed. Well, what do we do now? Really, what we do now, in my opinion, what we should do, all individuals should do, stop and look at the circumstances that happened in 2003, and say, did we make an error?
Did that work out?
Yeah, reevaluate all that.
And this is something that John Daly says at the end to summarize, is basically, if we had conviction back in 2003, or we think that this is going to work in 2043, we should go and plan to stay forever.
Yes.
Forever.
That's the nature of nation building. You'd have to, right? But check out the limited options that we have now. You alluded to. He says, and again, I'm just going to read the last paragraph from Ron Paul's thing, because he brings up something else that I think is interesting here. He says, because of the government's foolish policy of foreign interventionism, the U.S. is faced with two equally stupid choices. Check this out. Either pour in resources to prop up an Iraqi government that is a close ally with Iran, right? Which is now, okay, so if we do reinvade, and also, are we actually helping Iran, which we say we don't like those guys because they got they're making nuclear weapons or whatever they're doing.
They're not nice to us.
Okay, so that doesn't sound great, right? And I know some people don't accept the premise that they're tight with Iran, and so that's not an issue. But okay, so there's more to it. And he says, or throw our support with Al Qaeda in Iraq, which is actually ISIS. We talk about splintered, as we have done in Syria. So, because remember when we were supplying, the United States government, I should say, was supplying, or has been, or it still is supplying weapons to the freedom fighters in Syria. Well, who are those dudes? We don't, well, that's the whole deal. He's saying, basically, that's Al Qaeda. So we're actually, in Syria, he's saying we're actually with Al Qaeda.
We're with them. And then in Iraq, we've been against them. And
theoretically, I don't even know anymore in Iraq. The Taliban, I get it, but...
So on Tuesday, I like green beans, and on Wednesday, I don't.
Check this out. He says, I say we must follow a third choice. Ally with the American people and spend not one more dollar or one more life attempting to remake the Middle East. Haven't we already done enough damage? And that's the point. Everybody's focused on what do we do now, and I think that it's worthy to look back at where we originally made this error, and I think that will also help you, guide you in what we do now, right?
And in the future.
Yes. And that's the more important thing, and it's very important because obviously innocent people are dying, but ultimately fix this, and if we don't do that, obviously we didn't learn a thing, and we're just going to keep on our errors, and we're just going to go, I don't know what's going on.
Yep.
So, anyway... I think have we killed off John McClane and our?
We have.
All right. I think,
but he always comes back.
Yes, he always dies harder.
And there'll be another sequel.
The last one was with it. He had a guy in there who was his son, right?
I think
Did you
so.
see that one?
Oh,
I saw part of it. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's like, come on, the dude's getting old now. Who's he going to fight? Oh, they got his son.
Yeah, right.
And the only other thing that we really haven't discussed, and I don't know if we... Oh, I'm sorry. There's two other things on our laundry list here.
Okay.
The Bo Bergdahl situation.
We could talk for weeks, couldn't we?
I had a conversation. It will maybe get this kind of quickly. I had a conversation with a group of friends a week, two ago. I don't remember when it was. It was actually a little interesting. And I don't have any answers. And the reason I don't have answers is because I don't know Mr. Bergdahl. I don't know his father. I don't know firsthand what the communications were between the two of them. I don't know how exactly Bo Bergdahl performed in his unit. I don't know the exact circumstances, how he deserted, if that in fact comes out to be the case.
I have to admit that one of the things that drew me most into this case is the extremism of his dad and the his outspokenness and his mom and all this other stuff, that became a compelling part of the story.
Well, he spoke in Pashtun.
Absolutely.
Right at was it the Rose Garden or wherever, at the White House somewhere there. Yeah.
And then how they've been very critical of our president.
Yes.
And he's got the beard working.
The beard working, yeah.
Yep. Nice looking beard too, by the way.
My wife said, when she first saw that, she's like, "Oh, they got the dude back. He's right there." She didn't realize that she thought the father was in fact the son, and because he was like, "Oh, he looked like a guy who had been held captive." Right. And I understand, I should say, and I'm not fully in tune with this, that he did this in support of his son or trying to identify with his captors.
I had to give his dad some props for the lengths that he went through.
Yes.
To look out for his son.
Absolutely.
I found that to be really drew me into this thing.
And then part of the criticism was around that he and the Bergdahl's mother and father got more access than they should have gotten into these meetings. And the denial was. I'm alluding to this discussion I had with some friends a while back. Okay. And again, my point of that whole thing was I basically just was asking questions. I don't have the answers, which is what I was saying before. I was just asking the questions. Why did this family get access that others didn't? Was it Obama? Okay, maybe he was a difference maker there. I don't know.
Is it possible that his dad's actions said, "Well, holy crap, this guy's gone rogue on us, and he's gonna be acting on his own accord. Maybe we ought to just join the forces." Who knows?
Yeah, so many questions there. But the real question, for me, people say, okay. I think most people assume he's a deserter. And I said, okay, well, think just about that aspect of it. If he, from day one, so he's born and he didn't support the military, didn't believe in the military, I don't even like to use that word, I don't know how to describe, and he signed up knowing that he was essentially against the military, well, basically that's fraud because he's signed up, and I don't know the verbiage, but it's basically, hey, I'm here to work with you guys to help you, right? So if he went in with the thought that he wasn't going to assist the military or be a good soldier, maybe,
right.
Well, then he had a problem there, right? You made a fraudulent agreement, basically. But if he was there as a good soldier, and then he came to understand that he thought that what the U.S. government was doing was wrong, and he sympathized with some Afghani people. I'm making a lot of this up because I don't know the exact situation. But if he came to it later as the point, maybe he didn't withdraw from the military in a formal way or a way that he could. Maybe he could have done it better. Let's say I don't know again because I don't know the circumstances. But that you got to give him a little bit of credit for because. If he came to that conclusion, he says, I have to help these people. He went to go, theoretically, he went to go help them. Now, that may not be the case either because how did he get picked up by these guys? And, maybe, well, he was just going to help people and he did get picked up. Or maybe he was in communication with these fellows beforehand and this was he arranged this. There's so many questions. It's so much unknown. The bottom line is, I'm all for helping innocent people. And I'm all against injustice. So I would argue that this is an unjust war. And if he came to that conclusion, again, maybe he didn't do it in the right way. Maybe he could, I shouldn't say the right way. Maybe he could have done that better if that's what he did. So maybe that's what you could fault him for. On all the other stuff, the communication with his father, what were they saying there? We don't know all this. I mean, the NSA knows. That's who I know knows.
Yeah.
So there's so many questions here is what makes it interesting. And that was the conversation I had with friends is they were just like, man, there are a lot of questions. It's interesting to ask all these questions. And that's the whole point of all this stuff, not just the Bo Bergdahl case. That it's ask the questions, question authority. You can't do that. Well, why can't I do that? I mean, somebody should be able to give you a pretty reasonable answer quickly. It's not that, it's a big deal. Now, I know there's also a right and wrong time when to question authority. Like when you're at the airport and basically got your shorts down at your ankles and a guy's there with a rubber glove, that's probably not the time to question him because he could do some really bad things to you quickly, right? It's also a personal decision on when you want to fight the state. Do you want to risk going into jail? Do you want to risk a traffic ticket that you might have been able to talk your way out of? I mean, So it's not just, fight the authority all the time, 100%. No, think this through. And the only way this happens, and I'm slowly trying to wrap up the show here because we've gone on. The only way this ultimately happens, the rap that people get is, that anarchists, they want war, they want to fight, they want violent revolution, they want these things. If you read again The Law by Friedrich Bastiat, it's not possible for a true revolution to happen that way. It must come through learning and understanding and persuading people's minds. And you cannot do that with a gun and a bayonet. Mm-hmm. So if something does happen and it's violent, it's no good. Mm-hmm. I don't care if they say, yeah, we're anarcho-capitalists and we're going to go kill people. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're using that label because for some reason they like it, which gets you all kinds of ostracism. Mm-hmm. So I don't quite get that. But where did I just hear there was somebody talking about calling these guys anarchists, and of course they're not anarchists. I can't even remember what it was. A news story.
Yeah, it comes up. Right.
So this is the way this has to happen. Stuff like what we're doing on this radio show, get people to listen in, to think about this, just to inspire them to think is what we're trying to do here. Because I made this case on the show before. Everything you know ultimately is self-taught. Mm-hmm. You choose to learn yourself. You might hear different stuff, you might read different stuff, but ultimately it's internalized because you want to internalize it, or it's not internalized because you don't want to internalize it.
You believe it or you don't believe it.
Right. It's
you adopt it or you don't.
Yeah. It all comes from you, and again, that's where the inspiration for the show is for people to think about these things and then make that choice to either internalize them, go read some other stuff. By all means, this show is not intended to be all-encompassing in the whole case for liberty. What we're intending to do is say, hey, go here, read this, go check that out, look at that video, look at these things, right? And it's that giant context.
Think is what we want you to do.
Absolutely. Think and learn, and that's that context is what gets you there. And that's what can fully make the case for liberty. I made the argument that I was working on this for about a year before I actually came. And when I say I was working on this for a year, I was reading articles, I was reading books, I was going through a kind of heavy process. So this is maybe bite off a little bit, chew for a while, bite off a little more. It's not a thing. There's no switch to flip. It takes a while. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. What did I miss? How should we wrap this up properly, Brad?
I don't know. We covered a lot of stuff.
We covered a lot of ground. We usually do cover a lot of ground.
We do. We had some catching up to do, but there's a ton of stuff in the news.
Are you planning on being with me next week, or are you
don't know that I'm going to be?
Okay, so I might have Brad here. I might have Tanya here. I might have Tanya and Trigger here. I might just have Trigger. I don't know.
That's right.
What we're going to do next week, but if you get a chance, please tune in. Listen. Maybe there'll be a completely different list of topics next week. Yep. Who knows what happens in the news? Yep. But we'll comment on it and we'll put it in under the lens, the microscope of.
There you go. Find us on Facebook. Let us know your thoughts. If you have any questions, find Tom's blog.
Yeah, you can do that. Send me an email on there. Yeah, if you're local, you can come to Glassworks and check us out. I'll be there. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. Hope we intrigued your interest, and catch us next time.
Thanks for the good discussion, Tom. It was fun. Good seeing you.
It was fun. All right, next time, everybody. Good night.